Welcome to Cyber Monday. Joining me as always is my hardworking co-host, Mr. Dominic Vogel.
Sometimes I wonder if you're subtly telling me something.
It's a subliminal message.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
So Dominic, who do we have in the hot seat today?
So today we have Alan Cosgrave, who is partner of enterprise risk at M&P, and I've known him for years. And man, what a fantastic dude!
Very, very cool guy, very funny guy. Yeah. So I'm going to invite Alan in to sit in this chair. I'm going to hop over here, and we will be right back.
Alan, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join Christian and I. We're really looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. So first question out of the gate, you do enterprise risk management.
Yeah.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so enterprise risk, it covers lots of different areas, as you could imagine. So our practice at M&P, we focus on outsourced internal audit services, co-sourced internal audit services, so organizations that want some subject matter expertise and support with internal audit. And you're talking about, mature organizations that have that 3 lines of defense model, so financial institutions, some post-secondary institutions, things like that. We do a lot of one-off engagements around business and process improvement, enterprise risk maturity assessments. Organizations that have started identifying their risks and have developed a risk register will come in and say, okay, how mature are you? Because it's one thing to develop the register, and then it's another to kind of monitor and update your risks. And then through that, different components of services would obviously be cybersecurity, IT audit, treasury management, capital management. So a multitude of things. If somebody says they need a service, I'm pretty sure I can provide it.
Okay. So there's nothing you don't do when it comes to risk.
Officially, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
It's such a big umbrella, enterprise risk management. Are there some sectors which are more mature than others in terms of, some areas do it pretty well, others are really bad at it, some don't do it at all? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say that the organizations where they've got, a regulatory environment, the regulator is expecting that you'll have a good risk management framework. Yeah. They'll be more mature in how they've kind of set up their 3 lines of defense. So obviously first line is operations, second line is risk management function, third line is internal audit. Right. But the general consensus with most organizations is, even whether you've had risk management in there for 15 or 20 years or you just had it for 15 or 20 days, it's something that needs to be continuously improved, and there's lots of opportunities for improvement still. So it's still an emerging area. I think the big problem that organizations face is, like, how do we identify new and emerging risks, and then how do we actually put controls in place that our employees or team members will understand they're here to protect the organization, not to give you more responsibilities, and you're already very busy day to day.
So what areas of risk would you say that lead that list of new and emerging? Yeah,
I think regardless of industry or sector, information technology is huge. It's inherently very risky, so regardless of the controls you have in place, it's going to be a risky area for you. Most organizations, they'll have a certain dollar amount, and as a professional, I would always say, well, it's never good to kind of manage risk by a dollar amount. But when it comes to information technology risk, you could spend millions of dollars and still be susceptible to different types of risks or fraud that can come through, hacking and things like that. So definitely, I think IT is an area that most organizations struggle to get their head around, because they think it's very technical. And now that everybody, from a board perspective, they're setting up these subcommittees to manage IT governance, because there's IT in front of it. Oh, this is a technical area, and it's different from my day-to-day governance responsibilities, whereas it's just an additional governance piece you need to be aware of.
An interesting piece you mentioned about sort of like IT/cyber risk. Something that we see quite a bit is that with organizations, they'll have enterprise risk management, but the cyber IT piece of that is often completely separate. Why is that there's still almost like the left hand is not talking to the right hand, and what can organizations do to improve that?
Yeah, I think it's because they obviously, people want to say, okay, well, we leave it to the IT professionals. You'll know the risks better than I will. So I'll see with a lot of my clients, IT will have a risk register, and they'll have identified maybe between 50 and 70 different types of risks, and some of them will obviously be very low, and others will be medium and high. But how those risks actually get communicated to risk management and then how they flow through risk management overall risk register, there's a huge disconnect. And again, it's just because, IT's so complex. And there's a little bit because a couple of years ago when all the cyber stuff started happening, everybody's like, what if we get breached? Now it's more a case of, we probably are breached, so what are we going to do afterwards? So now there's probably a little bit of, I don't want to know too much about the IT risk. I'll pass it back to those guys. So if something does happen, I can be like, IT, we're meant to be managing the risk. Whereas a good risk management function should really be the quarterback.
Yes,
Sure. Again, comes back to risk culture. So do the frontline know what they need to do to manage the risk in their operations? Yeah. And in risk management, it's a tool to monitor and assess the controls. You'll get, if you got internal audit to third-party validation, but risk management should just be reporting up to the board and saying, here's our risk register. If I was a board member and I was getting a risk report and IT wasn't on there as a red or high priority, I'd kind of be like, what's going on here? You must have a really segregated network here or something like that. That's so complex that it'd be impossible to penetrate, which Dom, you would know better than I would. I don't think there's any network out there
that itself is a red flag if it's not there.
But if I was a board member and I didn't see IT as a high priority risk, I'd be kind of asking the question, okay, what's going on? And then just depending on the environment you work within, like if you're a financial institution, you'll have other risks around your liquidity and capital. If you're a post-secondary institution, you'd probably have a risk around maybe your dependence on international students and the fees that they bring. And an emerging risk would probably be new entrants into the market, so online universities. I got a note on my LinkedIn. They obviously didn't look at my profile. They were like, if you haven't gone to university, you can get an MBA. And I was like, I did go to university. And I don't think I need an MBA from Australia, but
thanks.
It's good to know.
Definitely.
But you've got new entrants like that where somebody can do an online MBA, which is awesome. And it's great that you don't have to, gone through formal post-secondary education to get that. But how do the post-secondary institutions here in Canada stay up to date on that? So other different types of risk, but definitely IT should probably be on everybody's risk register as high.
Maybe just to close that thread then, I know something which we often run across is that the cyber risk is not seen as a business risk. And it's like to your point, that's technical. The business need to know about that. Let IT deal with that. The IT managed service provider. Business is sort of like going la 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 la. We don't need to know. Ostrich head in the sand, that type of thing. Do you see that sort of tide changing in which more businesses are saying, cyber risk equals business risk, and that is part of enterprise risk. It's not its own portfolio. Cyber risk needs to be under that sort of ERM.
I think again with the cyber stuff, there's still a culture of like, we're probably too small to be breached. Whereas I always tell my clients, I'm like, actually, it's the smaller guys that they go after. My wife and I have a friend, and she's a hairdresser, and she was selling her business, and her book of clients was maybe $30,000. And she got breached, and the customer service you get from the hackers is like exceptional. So they phone up and they say, hey, we know you're about to sell your business. You make some money, we make some money. So if you deposit the equivalent of $15,000 in Bitcoin down in the West Broadway ATM,
we're your new business partner.
We'll release your information. And she's kind of like, what do I do? Like running off a home laptop, probably hasn't been patched in years. Kind of phoned me up and said, what should I do? And I'm like, obviously you don't have like a ransomware policy or incident management response plan, and you don't have insurance. So, if you want to make some money, you should probably pay. So kind of negotiated them down to the equivalent of $10,000. And then, they made some money, she made some money, but, a couple of days later she got like, a feedback survey on how was our customer service through your
scale of 1 to 5
breach. And those stories obviously don't make the headlines. You just see the big ones for XYZ Incorporated, and here's a data breach, X million customers. It's even like now we're going to come into tax season early next year, we'll all get the phone calls saying, hey Alan, you haven't paid your taxes, which I have if anyone is watching this, but you owe however many million. And I'd be like, wow, I had a really good year last year then if I owe that much. But they prey on, could you imagine a new immigrant coming here that doesn't speak English, and they're like, oh my God, I just started a business. I didn't realize I had all these taxes. So it's those type of things. Like people, once you're here and you're used to it, you're like, oh, well, that's a scam. Who would fall for it? But,
if you're not familiar with the process.
Yeah, they do prey on individuals and small organizations and things like that. So that's probably a downfall of some of our clients. I always, when we go in to do work, we want to show the value that we add, but it's also difficult when you're a consultant because they think, well, you're trying to sell them something they don't need. And generally that's not my style. I'm like, I think you need this and it will add value, and we'll find a way to make it work within your budget and stuff like that. But it's generally, when it comes to cyber, I'm like, you should do some sort of a health check. And it's not to scare you, it's just to give you peace of mind, because you may even be collecting data that you don't know you're collecting. When I talk to clients, I always say, if you can't make money off it, don't collect it. Why would you have it?
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, but I think because the level of sophistication isn't quite there, it's just, well, we'll get as much as we can and we'll figure out if we need it later on, and then something does happen and before you know it, you're breached, somebody might sue you, you don't have insurance, and it's like, oh, I could have spent a couple of $1,000s to get a health check and get me set up for success, but now I've been breached and it's going to cost me
much more.
Much more. Yeah.
It's funny about the customer service with the ransomware. I know that we've heard that stories from clients of ours who have said that they had trouble paying the ransom, and there was a customer support number, and I remember sort of through a friend of a friend, and they said, well, their customer service was fantastic. This is an accounting firm, a small accounting firm. They said they were much easier to deal with than the CRA.
Yeah. Well, I think they helped Google map where the Bitcoin machine, because everyone's like, well, where's the Bitcoin machine? They're usually in a JJ Bean or a Blend or something, or somewhere random. But they helped with all that. So it's amazing, but it's big business for them. It's easier to get $10,000 or $15,000 every day than when you think about the big organizations. They got to be in the network for many months, kind of doing the old school man in the middle attack, kind of watching the correspondence between CEOs and CFOs and trying to see, okay, what's the important information we want to get out of here, whereas it's easier to get the low hanging fruit, think of a doctor or dentist practice that's running off, a laptop, and the kids maybe use it in the evening, download Skype and all these other things, Messenger, and
you might be the low hanging fruit when
that
happens, or you're saying what you said before. We're probably too small.
Yeah,
that means you're the low hanging fruit for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there's a little hint for you.
Yeah, with and another thing that trend wise we're seeing is, and you mentioned it there, physician offices, dental offices, they're becoming more of a target, at least from a cyber attack perspective, a ransomware perspective. Again, that mindset of we're only going to spend X number of dollars on our IT. Can't spend any more. If it happens, it happens, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you think about sole practitioners like that, or even owner managed businesses. Yeah. Even though you're set up as a corporation or whatever, you still see every dollar as, well, if I spend a couple of $1,000 on a cyber health check, then it's a couple of thousand I don't have. Yeah. As opposed to, well, it's just a really key piece to kind of managing your business risk. Same for organizations, again, think about the financial services sector. Margins are tight. The mortgage rates are still at an all-time low. It's hard for them to have, that interest income that they can reinvest back into the business, so they have to cut costs. When I remember speaking to one organization, and they stopped their security management services, or cancelled the contract because they're like, oh, we couldn't afford it anymore. And I said, well, can you afford not to have it? Surely there's somewhere, and it's not like you're talking, this is a multi-million-dollar organization. You're maybe paying for one of the big companies to monitor your IT security, a couple of $100,000. It's an FTE and a half.
Yes.
Surely when you look at your kind of number count, there's somewhere where you could maybe cut back on some employees and actually manage your risk through a third party. So
and I mean, in reality, if you have a significant breach, there may not be a Christmas party for you.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. Like it's
So maybe you could allocate
Yeah.
some of that Christmas budget.
well, yeah, and like obviously being Irish, I like a Christmas party as much as the next guy or girl. But yeah, like sometimes you have to just prioritize your budget and say, you know what, yeah, maybe this year we don't have our party at the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
We just have a potluck
Somebody's
or
house.
whatever, or someone's house. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think everybody's kind of trying to save money, but probably at the expense of managing their risk, you know,
Sure.
because nobody wants to reduce FTE either, you know, like
Right.
I'm not trying to, you know, say, oh, you have to like get rid of people to pay for your,
Yeah.
to manage your risk. That's quite the opposite, but you can redeploy people and put them into actually maybe more revenue facing
Yeah.
roles and put them at work generating the revenue that will help pay for you know, the additional risk management costs that you have.
The thing I'm curious about, when you're working with leadership of companies,
Yeah.
you've got the C-suite and you've got the board, what does that communication look like across the organization? Because enterprise risk, you kind of downplay it, but there's so many different categories from supply chain risk to health and safety to environmental and all, even cyber risk that we're talking about. How do you break down those silos?
Yes.
Get all that risk communication going across and up to inform the business decisions that are being made.
Yeah, and that's the difficult piece. So I think that's when an organization looks at their, like you link it back to your strategic plan, your strategy, and you think about, okay, what are the objectives you want to achieve over the next 1 to 5 years? What is going to impact our ability to meet those objectives? And then within our existing environment, like using historical data and kind of forward looking, what are our key risks? Because from a management perspective, you want to have a good handle on all the risks. But from a board perspective, you want to have a good handle on, okay, what are the probably top 5 or 10 risks that are going to kind of keep me awake at night? And if this happens, it's going to impact our earnings, our reputation and stuff like that. But there can be some risks at an operational level that mightn't flow up to the board, but from a CEO's perspective or a CFO or whatever, COO, they're like, yeah, I have zero appetite for, obviously, every organization will have zero appetite for, you know, health and safety issues. Like, looking after your employees is everybody's primary focus. But yeah, how do you actually, as a management team, get comfort that, okay, yeah, we've got a health and safety policy manual, but how do we know that staff are doing the training and adhering to that? So again, it's making sure that the risk culture in the organization is clearly understood, that there is an appetite to, you know, openly discuss risks. I think a lot of organizations, when you talk to the first line of defense, operational management, they'll say, oh, I can't bring risks to my boss because he wants us, or he or she wants a solution to go with it.
Right.
So kind of, it's like, don't
It
come to me with a
requires
problem.
something.
Yeah, come to me with a solution instead. So I think when you kind of have that open...
I'm having flashbacks, by the way.
Yeah. But when you create that culture where, yeah, you can come forward with a risk and then together, collectively, we'll kind of figure out the best way to manage it. That's that helps with that piece. But you're right, there's so many different types of risk, and I think that's what organizations struggle with. We'll get invited in a lot to do risk maturity assessments. So how mature is your risk management process? And what lots of organizations will do is, like, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they'll have had somebody come in and build out their risk register. So they'll have 50 or 75 risks, but nobody teaches them, okay, how do you monitor and manage the risks and risk rank them? So then I'll come in and they'll say, can you do a maturity assessment? Like, okay, show me your risk register. Oh, here's one we developed 15 years ago. I was like, okay, well, show me your board reporting. Oh, we don't report on risks to the board. I was like, okay, well, show me your latest risk register. Oh, it's this one. I was like, well, this is dated 2006.
1999.
And they're like, yeah, but I think a lot of the risks are still the same. And I'm like, well, yeah, like floppy disk, just like been stored like in a dry safe
Y2K.
place. Yeah. Y2K is about to happen. I'm like, yeah, all those things have kind
Sailed.
of surpassed.
Yeah.
The time capsule.
Yeah, exactly. So we come in, and then, like, what I like to do is, obviously I can tell them straight away, you're immature. I don't need to look at your risk register. You've told me it hasn't been updated.
Consider them assessed.
Yeah. So what I like to do is then just hold like an information session with management and say, in your line of business, write down the top 3 things that you worry about when you go to work, or what keeps you awake at night. And then as a group, if you get 7 or 8 people there and they all come with 3 risks, then you got 24 risks that you can kind of sit down and assess, and then do the whole, okay, what's the likelihood of this happening? What's the impact? Tell me the controls you have in place. And then from that, through like basically a 1-day workshop, you can come up with their top 10 or 15 risks and rank them. And then I say, this is where you start. Because I think most organizations make the mistake of, let's build this thing completely. Whereas I'm like, start slowly and we'll build it up over time. Because if you start with 50 or 75 risks, you're going to be like, I can't manage.
What do you do
but
next?
10 or 15 is a lot more manageable. And then once they go through that process once, you can be like, we're just going to meet every quarter and refresh it. And it's not going to take as long on a quarterly basis, because you're going to just assess how is the risk trending, or if we identified we had a lack of controls, how we put the control in place. And then on an annual basis, again, book off a day, maybe line it up with your strategic planning session, and again, link your risks and risk management back to your strategy.
And we have the exact same approach. So obviously somebody who has a time capsule like that is not helping you to do your job to help them. So how can they help you help them? Like the Jerry Maguire.
I was going to say, I'm getting Cuba Gooding Jr. It's like, show me the money.
How do they do that?
Yeah, I think really when we go into organizations and, they're immature when it comes to risk management, it's just saying to them, okay, it's a clean slate. Let's come with an open mind and honestly think about your risks, because the natural thing to do is, there's no risks in my area of the business. Like the CEO is sitting right beside me. Of course, I'm not going to tell you what the risks are. If somebody thinks they don't have any risk, well, then that's a risk in itself, because they must be totally deluded. Like there's some sort of risk. There has to be. Like you can't do business or make money without taking on a certain amount of risk.
Pretty much.
Professional services, every time I take on an engagement, I'm taking on a certain amount of risk, because maybe I've priced it inappropriately and I've given them a fixed fee. Maybe we're taking on a bit of work that we don't know could be beyond the scope or breadth of our services, or just by the fact that if you don't show up and do your best every day, then it goes from Alan is a good service provider in the marketplace. That guy's a cowboy. Like Kim here did this job, and I wouldn't use him again. Then my reputation is shot.
Yeah, right.
So if somebody was to ask me what are the things that keep you up at night, it's not that people think I'm a cowboy across town. I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, it's like service quality and making sure I can put my best foot forward. And I think when I talk to my clients, I'm like, there must be some things that worry you. Maybe it's succession planning risk. Maybe it's not health and safety stuff. You've got good controls, but you've got Jack or Jane that have been there for 15 years and they know everything inside out, and you don't think it's a risk because you don't think they're going to retire anytime soon. But what about when like her lotto ticket does come in and she's like, hey, it's been a slice, but I'm out of here. I've won $10 million, and you're like, oh, we actually didn't know what she did or the depth of breath. And those are the type of risks that kind of go unnoticed, and then they only come to the forefront when that person leaves, and then you somebody's like, oh, can you find their job description? And it's 15 years out of date, and then you try and hire someone for that role, and they come in, they're like, oh, this isn't what I expected.
So a theme I keep hearing is bring everything up to date. Stay current with your risks in today's business world.
Yeah, and it'll like save you a lot of time as well in the long run, and a lot of headaches. It always seems quite daunting because, again, risk management at most organizations, it's probably done off the side of someone's desk. So it's like, oh, who's got an interest in risk? And when we go out to clients, that's one of the things, we come up with a risk register, and I like to leave them with a tool for how they can assess it. But they're like, we don't know who's going to do this. And then the person who gets assigned it, they're like, oh my God, I have to like follow up with them, and I don't like talking to him or her because they're a pain, and they're just going to tell me that there's nothing to update. So
and no budget.
And like I'm already very busy, and I got to get out of here at 4:00 every day. So it's it's difficult.
I feel very hopeless now. Is there hope in the world?
There is hope.
There is hope.
It's almost Christmas, so got to have hope this time of year.
On that note, Alan, Christian, I just love that convo. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for taking time out, and we'll do this again soon.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Christian and I will be right back momentarily to wrap things up.
Awesome episode. I think what really stood out to me the most was just what can help somebody like Alan help you is just that idea of having everything up to date, whether that be key people's job descriptions or your risk register. Keep everything up to date. Your 2006 risk register is fairly useless today. So keep everything current. What about for you?
It was just such an engaging conversation. He's such a character, and I thought the bit that I really liked, what she was talking about, was that whole notion of just having those periodic health checks and how important that is for small and mid-sized businesses. It's not just something for large organizations. The whole notion of enterprise risk does very much matter to the small and mid-sized businesses as well. So I think Alan had some terrific points there.
Definitely. So thanks for watching. You can check out our other podcasts on conversationsthatmatter.tv, and we'll see you next Monday.